Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to the most interesting people in the world of pop culture. And this week on the show, we have got an absolute legend in the world of music. Some call him a prog rock guy, some call him a rock guy, some call him an art rock guy. We just like to call him Devin Townsend, and he's going to be joining us this week on the Rockman Power Hour. Thanks again for joining us. And we just want to say a big shout out to all of you for helping us make last week's episode an absolute success. Troy Van Leeuwen from Queens of the Stone Age joined us, and we are so excited that so many of you tuned in. It just goes to show that when you've got a great conversation and the word gets out there, people are down to listen, and we are very happy that you are all down to listen. I want to bring in my co-host, Ryan Stick. Ryan, first of all, your fridge looks so full right now.
Yeah. Live feed from the fridge right now. I'm, I got shrunk by a shrunk rat. I was reading a weird science comic and, monkey see, monkey do. So I started shrinking. Yeah. And I said, if I'm going to be short, if I'm going to be this small for the rest of my life, I'm going to chill with this hot sauce.
Well, I absolutely love the background. And that, of course, is Heartbeat Hot Sauce. And that's Ryan's fridge full of it. I've got to order some because I'm low. But the good thing is I've got the promo code Rockman20. And that right there will get me 20% off my entire order. And I wanted to show this one off because this is one that I'm about to crack open. This is the In Flames hot sauce that they did in collaboration with the band. So definitely check this out. They've got a lot more. And this one goes a little hot on the hot meter. This gets right to the hot, almost bordering into extra hot.
Rightfully so.
Have you tried this one? You have, eh?
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense if, Ice Cube had, raging hot sauce, Ice Cube, I think he should, get into Ice Cube trays.
Right.
Maybe, some of that, a cooling beverage, but In Flames, I expect my mouth to be on fire.
Well, that's it. But you know what I love about it, too? We haven't really talked a lot about this, but the ingredients. Bell peppers, habaneros, onions, distilled vinegar, organic cane sugar, sea salt, garlic, lime juice, canola oil. That's it. So not a bunch of crap in this. If you're to pick up a hot sauce from, let's say, the grocery store, and you're to look into what goes into their hot sauce, the list is the ingredients list is like this long, and it's a bunch of shit that you don't understand.
Kitty litter, plasticine,
stuff you can't pronounce. So definitely check out Heartbeat Hot Sauce. They're absolutely wonderful, and they are the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. And a big shout out to Studio House Designs. I see that you are you're rocking the Hellraiser long sleeve, and you need that right now because you're right in front of the fridge, so it must be a little chilly. I like that.
I like your sass today, Rockman.
Like that. I like that one. And I've got now this, Ryan, I don't know if you know this film. I'm going to move my mic a little bit out of the way. This is The Wicker Man. Have you ever seen The Wicker Man?
No, I've seen clips of Nicolas Cage's remake of The Wicker Man.
Yeah, don't watch that.
The Wicker Man. Okay,
don't watch that. Watch the original one with Christopher Lee. Dude, it's so good. It's so good, and it's at the. Do you remember when we had Kirla Janice?
We didn't have her on the podcast, but we Fantasia. For Fantasia, we did a little interview of her.
The reason why I'm bringing her up is that she put out this incredible documentary that was at Fantasia, I believe last year, all about folk horror.
And I was a cinematographer for one little part of that, and I didn't even realize it. Yeah. She hired me to be like, I need someone to do camera and microphone. I'm like, cool. Yeah. Then 2 years later, I'm watching this amazing documentary, and I'm like, that shot looks painfully familiar. And I'm like, wait a second.
You shot it.
I think I shot that. And she even included me in the end credits, and that was really nice.
Yeah,
because she would have been like, hey, thanks for the job. Now go to hell. It's like, nope. I live in cinema history thanks to her and that little video job I did.
And Severin, who she works for, put out this great folk horror box set, which I have. And it's like, I love this thing. And they talk about Wicker Man a lot. So definitely check out Wicker Man, check out Hellraiser, and check out Studio House Designs, because that is the level of geekdom that they dive down, not the level, but that's the rabbit hole of geekdom that they're willing to dive down into to bring you some of the coolest shirts ever. So StudioHouseDesigns.com. Thank you so much for supporting us, and make sure you go support them.
May I make a segue?
Please do.
Today is the day after my friend Marco's birthday.
Yeah.
And for his birthday, I got him a Studio House Design shirt.
Oh, nice.
Similar to the one I'm wearing right now.
Look at you.
That's
with the long
right.
sleeve and the short sleeve.
Yeah, when we were getting our sponsorship stuff, I took it upon myself to buy my friend a t-shirt from them because they're just damn good shirts, and you got to spread the love when you can, right?
I couldn't agree more, man. And I love supporting those guys. So yeah, check out Studio House Designs. They're wonderful, and they've got some Lost Boys stuff coming out, I believe. By the time you've seen this, it's already come out. It might still be on sale, but definitely check them out. They're always doing great stuff. So, Ryan, listen, we have got someone on the podcast this week, and I don't want to take too much time because the conversation that we had with them is great. But let's just tell everybody really quickly how this came about for you, because I booked this with our friend Sarah from Looters, who helped us get Devin on the podcast. But I told you about this conversation literally a couple hours before. And I was like, oh, yeah. And this afternoon, I'm talking to Devin Townsend. And you were like, what? What were we doing in and outs for? Did you want to do a couple of them? Because I also have a tape at 11 o'clock. I don't know if you want to do it with me. I wasn't sure if you wanted. Do you know who Devin Townsend is?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to come on with me at 11 with him?
Fuck yes. Jesus Christ. Are you kidding?
No.
Holy shit, yeah.
You like Devin Townsend?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
He was the last concert I saw before COVID fucking started.
All right, so we'll have him. So then we're going to talk to him at 11 together. I didn't know if you'd like him or not. Okay, but yeah, because most people that have that reaction, if they like him, they like him. And if they don't, they're like,
Devin Townsend's fucking amazing. Like, it's either complete indifference or complete infatuation.
Are you recording?
Yeah.
You should keep that reaction.
Yeah.
Oh, because it's real.
Slack-jawed amazement that you're like, you want to do it too? It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, I found a way to make your penis bigger. One in. It's like what? Yeah. What? Yeah. So anyhow, the knowledge that I didn't have any time to procrastinate over the fact I was going to talk to Devin Townsend for the first time in my life was shocking and amazing.
Yeah.
And thanks.
Cool. Well, listen, this guy is a legend. He started out with his band Strapping Young Lad. He's got a solo project / journey, if you will, that he's been on forever. And I just love him because he's intelligent, he's musically fearless, and he's just got an incredible outlook on creating music, staying in the industry. And it was a really, really cool conversation. I highly recommend, if you're a musician and you're looking on how to keep a great attitude in music, Devin Townsend's someone that you should not only follow, but listen to. Because yes, his music speaks that, but his words speak that as well. And I just think his whole attitude towards creating music, sustaining a musical career, is really a healthy one for young musicians to be listening to and to be maybe, I don't want to say mimic, but to take some cues from.
We even bring it up in the conversation of, image versus music and how much effort people put into the image and the music. Like I, for one, love theatrical bands.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've seen theatrical bands that rely on the theatricality and the music takes a backseat. And I think all the best ones kind of do both. Mm-hmm. And we talk all about that and a lot of other things. So I don't know. What do you say? Do we show them this stuff now?
I think
we just dork the fuck out right when we're done.
I think we just dive right into this conversation. Okay. So without any further ado, here is our conversation with Devin Townsend. All right, really, really happy to be joined by a gentleman whose music both Ryan and I have been following for a long, long time. Being someone who's grown up in the Canadian metal scene, he's someone's name that you've heard forever and whose name carries a lot of respect for a lot of reasons. And I'm glad to have Devin Townsend on the podcast with us today. Thanks so much, man, for accepting and for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man.
Ryan, when I told Ryan that we had booked you for the podcast, Ryan, what was your expression?
I think it was jaw-dropping, awestruck joy. Like a kid on Christmas morning receiving a Nintendo. that his brothers and sisters didn't get. It's like, this isn't Nintendo for you. It's like, oh, okay.
I guess it depends on which Nintendo system it is, though. Right?
Well, that always shows your age, right? Well, I don't know. I'm a Super Nintendo 64 guy who experienced a lot of your music in chronological order. So
nice, man. Yeah. Nice, man.
Yeah.
My favorite was the first Nintendo because it had, what was it? Duck Hunt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just if that name for a game is great. Like the cunt is great, man.
I always thought the cunt was the dog that was just like, mocking you every time you'd fuck up, which I did often.
Fuck that dog, man.
Ryan, you also mentioned that Devin was the last show that you saw before the pandemic, right?
Yep. Literally, it was when you played, believe you played 2 shows in a row.
Yeah.
And I believe I was at the second one. And I brought my friend Patrick there, and it was just it was a really cool show because I believe you guys were making up your set list like on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
At least it seemed like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna retroactively say that's what happened. Was that in Montreal or?
Yeah, we're both in Montreal.
Okay, so that'd be the Corona Theater, ironically enough, then, right? Yeah. Yeah. No, man, it was it seems like since that time it's just been this blur of activity, but yeah, I remember the shows, man. I had only forgotten that we had done 2, but no longer.
Well, luckily you did too, because I couldn't go to the first one and was obviously pretty fucking bummed. But I gotta say, my best friends in the world who adore you, Marco and Dana, like if it wasn't for Marco, I don't think I know half the bands. He was the coolest kid in high school. Right before we begin this, dude, I just want to ask, who's your Marco Vaccaro? Who got you into music and stuff? Because you're so versatile.
I think my neighbors, when I was a kid, the neighbors that moved into the house beside us were I think my parents were a little sketched out by them, but they had a band, and I remember the oldest brother playing guitar, and that's where I kind of find out about Metallica or Slayer or even Van Halen. And I think it's interesting how your social group and where you were raised ends up informing so much of what you listen to. And because I was raised in Surrey in British Columbia, it was at the time it was not rough, but it was kind of like definitely sort of blue collar vibe, and any overt displays of artistic sort of flair was often looked upon with a certain amount of scorn. So my propensity for being such was mixed from a very early age with respect for like AC/DC and Van Halen and things like that. You couldn't have one or the other. I couldn't just kind of commit to the rock and roll stuff as much, because as much as I loved it, I was so drawn towards, orchestral things or musical theater. So I covertly followed that path while still being into the Trans Ams and BMXs, right?
Right. and it's funny because, I find now, I've got 2 kids. I've got my daughter's going to be 16 and my son's going to be 19, and they're both really into music. But what's great about them is that they can like everything, as opposed to someone like myself who's 52, very similar to what you went through. I had to, if I was into something like Duran Duran, none of my friends were into Duran Duran, and I couldn't admit that to anyone. But I'm like, I love this poppiness. Like they just write great fucking choruses. But you couldn't admit that to your friend who was who was listening to Master of Puppets.
Yeah, well, I mean, I liked them both. I mean,
yeah, same.
I think I was fortunate in a sense that ever since I started playing guitar, maybe about 7th grade or 8th grade, I couldn't hide the fact that I was, a little different than my friends. And so because I had a certain proficiency for playing guitar, I could kind of get away with being the weirdo that I am.
Yeah.
So, my buddies would be like, oh, that's that kid that he can play really well, but he likes Enya, which is kind of weird. But, he can play Judas Priest songs, so we can hang, right?
Right. It's so funny you say Enya. I mean, that's a perfect example of, me too. Same. I mean, I would listen to Enya, and I'd listen to PM Dawn, and I would listen to, Cannibal Corpse. I mean, it doesn't matter. Same. Music is music. Same. It's just got to be something that's fun.
Well, what's interesting is with that as well is as I've gotten older and I've done so many records that have gone in different directions, and some of which obviously was quite heavy. I remember it seeming strange to me that people who were dyed in the wool with metal, like that's their whole life, was like, how could you possibly want to listen to anything other than metal? It seemed confusing to this particular demographic. And I remember thinking it's the equivalent of only ever eating steak.
Right.
Like in the morning, at lunch, for a snack. And I think there's sometimes that, yeah, steak is good, but I don't want it all the time. Fuck no, man. And I think it's the same thing with music. Like music ends up becoming like a component to my life, and well, it has become a component to my life. And as a result, it's each one of these I don't know, disciplines, I guess, metal or new age or orchestral or whatever, becomes just sonic colors that you can draw from. But one thing to the exclusion of everything else is just, man, I get so bored so quick.
Well, listening to your albums, once again, I'll bring up one of my best buds, Marco, whose birthday will be right around the time we release this interview, actually.
Right on, Marco.
He was playing your album, and I believe we were playing Mario Kart or something, and just song by song, I'm just like, dude, who are all these bands? Like, dude, this is like the same guy. This is the same guy, Devin Townsend. And I remember like Animals comes on, and I'm just thinking in my head, I'm a very visual person when it comes to my imagination. I'm like, holy shit, the music video for this must be insane. There must be fire and brimstone and stop animated animals. And there be the explosion coming out of the mountain, ripping off Godzilla's head. It must be insane. And then I look up the video, and it's you in your backyard in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, loosely dancing around to the tune. And I'm just like, that is the ultimate fuck you to all these other people in metal who are obsessed with their image. And I'm like, oh my God, he put everything he has into the versatility of the music and gives no fucks about the visual equivalent. Was that completely on purpose, or is that kind of a statement basically saying, listen, guys, you don't need $100 million video to say this song is worth paying attention to?
Well, I think it's, first off, I appreciate the acknowledgement and the compliment. But I'm afraid I don't think about it that much. I'm fortunate to be surrounded by friends and, you know, people that I care for. And in the scene, a lot of the bands who I've become close to, like, who are friends of mine, part of that is they've actualized in their own way exactly what it means to be that band, whatever it is, right? And I feel that that's what I've done as well. So as a result of that, there's no ulterior motive to the work. You know, it's the reason why I danced around in the backyard like an idiot is just because that seemed appropriate. There's no like, this is going to stick it to the man, or this is going to make the other bands, you know, try to prove a point or whatever. I think one of my favorite quotes was always, if you never lie about yourself, well, to the extent that you're able, then you never have to remember anything. It's not like you have to be vigilant with like, well, what did I say to this guy in order to uphold some sort of image. If you're always just like, dude, I do what I do, and that's what I felt like doing, and then the rationale for that just becomes trying to be as authentic as you can in the moment, as opposed to any ulterior motive. And I think it's funny because in hindsight, I think you can claim these things as being intentional. Yeah. Like, yeah, man, this worked, and therefore I really had this plan as to what I was trying to do. But there's none of that. I kind of just follow the path of least resistance when it comes to the writing process, in that the ideas that I find most compelling at that particular point in my life are almost always based on the fact that subconsciously that's where I'm headed. So following that, after a while, it just refines the vision. It's like, okay, well, in order to get that correct, that's right, that's wrong, this is a little off, maybe this font is wrong, maybe it's more of this color scheme. And then by the end, you've got like an essay of, in a sense, what you've done over the past couple of years. You're like, well, that's where I was, for right, better or for worse. And to the extent that I was able at the time, I tried to articulate it to the best of my ability, warts and all. And that's all there is to it.
I think that's one of the great things about creating music. You know, being someone who has been a musician and who has created music over the years and been in a band and done the thing. It is kind of nice when you are able to look back on what you've done with a bit of distance, because I don't know about you, but whenever I would put anything out, the last thing besides playing stuff live, once a tour cycle would be done, the last thing I would want to do is spend any time listening to that. I would want to just forget it existed. But when you get to, look at something maybe you did 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it's like a snapshot in time. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's like a memory. And that's what, for me and for most people, music is really linked to memory. Smells for me are linked to memory too. Like white musk from the Body Shop. I smell that. It reminds me of my girlfriend when I was 16. It's these little things
for me.
There you go. So when you have these things, so I think that's the nicest thing about being a creative, is that you're able to create not only these moments for other people, but for yourself as well. You can document kind of where you've been.
That documentation is the key, though. The job description, I think, if I was to look at it from afar, like if I was, not as in it as I clearly am, it's like you're a reporter in a sense, and your life is so specific to your own biases and background and upbringing and traumas or what have you. So it's always going to be interpreted through that filter. But I think that if you're doing it correctly, sort of a weird word, but if you're doing it in the ways that I feel you should be doing it, each period of your life will be documented in a way that resonates most appropriately with that time. So maybe you were traveling a lot, so there's going to be maybe a whimsical or a more transient nature to the music song by song. Or maybe you're stuck at home in a pandemic and things are going to come out in that way. And so my only criteria for whether or not what I've done is worth a shit really is whether or not when I listen to it, I think, that accurately summarizes that particular period for me. And I think because the curriculum of my life is specific, it's also not really any different than anybody else's. So I've always tried to keep things lyrically, not vague, but able to summarize that particular period of my time, but also with emotions that are common, right? I don't know. That was a word salad. Sorry.
It's all good. All good.
It's awesome. So Devin, the first time without realizing it, years before, the first time I ever heard your voice was I was watching this show on Much Music. They used to be called The Wedge, where they would play some alternative music very, very late. And I heard I was sleeping and I woke up to the sound of this powerful voice. And I'm just like, wow, this isn't Iron Man. This isn't. So I catch the name at the end of the video. As kids before YouTube, this is what you had to do. And it said Strapping Young Lad. And I was like, wow, what a fucking singer. Went straight back to sleep. Then years later, I find myself at Heavy Montreal, where you're playing not with the band, but you're playing with yourself.
No, dude, that's not just Heavy Montreal, man.
When you're playing a set, it's just you, some pedals, and this voice, and it just really came full circle. I'm like, holy shit. That voice I heard when I was a kid, just getting into music, here it is in front of me. And he doesn't need a whole band to move thousands of people, in which when we were watching your show, we were very, very moved. Like when you take away the drums and all the extra instrumentation, what made you start going out playing shows like solo like that?
Well, a lot of it's convenience, it's there were certain territories that I was told, well, we can't afford to do that. It's to get the gear in there. I was just in Turkey. I just did the same thing. And they said, we'll have to cancel your show because there's a border cost that we weren't anticipating, and it's going to put you in the whole 40 grand or something. And so I said, well, let me just take an acoustic and I'll go do that. And by doing that, you can actually make a couple of bucks, and you can show up and play in places that I've been told that you can't play. I did the same thing in India. I did the same thing in Singapore. I did the same thing in China. It's like, so by doing that, you can kind of break into a market. It sounds awful. It's not necessarily what I mean, but in a sense, it's the truth. It's like you can present yourself and say, well, here's me without anything. And if this is something that resonates with people, then we can hopefully come back with a band somewhere down the line. But again, I find that there's so many parameters that get kind of imposed on the industry. And by that, I mean, there seems like there's a certain amount of things that you're told when you're doing audio engineering, for example, or when you're putting a band together, every YouTube video will tell you these are the things that you need to do. These are the things that you don't need to do. Mm-hmm. Some asshole holding his face with some what the fuck thing on the YouTube.
Big yellow writing.
Hate it. Dude, I hate that, man. It's like,
fucking hate it.
I stuck 75 golf balls in my hamster's ass. What happens next? Right? Or whatever it is. Dude. It's like, fuck you, dude. But anyway, they'll all tell you that it's like, these are the things that you have to do.
Sure.
You know, you have to adhere to this, and this. And if you do this, this is how you can become successful. And it all seems so naive in a way, because a lot of how these things that have broken through is because they didn't follow those rules, right? And I think a lot of the ways in which I've managed to create some sort of longevity for myself career-wise is I haven't thought about it too much. I just work as hard as I am able and try to make the music as cool as I can. But past that point, man, sometimes it just like, let's go play acoustic shows. Let's go out and do this. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But there's no rhyme or reason or motive behind it, really.
You know, it's funny, the analogy of you presenting yourself like to break into a market, because in essence it is what it is. And it's kind of like when you go to an open mic night in a coffee shop. Someone will show up with their acoustic guitar just to give you a taste of what it's like, and then if someone likes it, you'll come back with a bigger band. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's smart to actually to be able to have, it's smart, but it's also fortunate that you're able to do that, because some people can't do it stripped down. You know what I mean? Some people need everything, or it doesn't work. And the reality is that, all that stuff around you that you've got to bring when you're a full band, it's a lot more logistical planning,
Oh, it's huge, dude. And post-pandemic, it's off the charts. Like when we have been doing these tours recently, I just came back from a headline run, and then we're going out with Dream Theater. Yeah. And a lot of how those parameters come together is in the past, they would say, what sort of production are we going to bring? Right. And they say, okay, well, maybe we do some video walls, or we do some 90s looking scrims, or whatever it is that we choose to do. But there was kind of this option ahead of the time. Mm-hmm. And now they're just like, okay, so you can have 7 carats over the course of the tour. How are we going to distribute this? It's like, it seems.
Yeah, no, it's
so different.
This is what you hear constantly from bands that are going out on the road now. It's exactly that, like, well, how much pyro do you think we should do this? And it's a complete different landscape.
I think you can spin things in a lot of ways, right? Like one of the ways that you could spin is just be like, we only want to provide our audience the best possible experience. And because we can't bring pyro, we're not going out. But there's another part of me that just thinks maybe they just don't want to tour.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people have had a change of heart in a lot of ways. I mean, I know so many people that are just like, it was kind of nice to have some time to reflect and not have to do all this stuff.
My kids know who I am now.
Yeah. Man. There's that, isn't there? I watch your parents slowly dissolve when they have to spend more time with each other than they ever have. But I think that I think that playing shows is important, and I think that if the only way to do it is to pull back on the production, then that's the option. And I mean, if people don't want to come to a show because the production is less than it was pre-pandemic, then maybe they're not a fan of the music in the first place, right?
100%.
Like,
yeah.
I go see Rammstein because it doesn't matter what they're playing.
No,
even though
they're
cool,
awesome.
It's just it's astounding, right? So if you're just a musician, and your trip isn't, we have the most pyro of all times, then you should just work it without that, I guess. But that being said, just to contradict that, after this next round of touring, I'm going to come off the road for a couple of years, and not because I won't tour again. It's just that I've got this project in mind that I'm going to write, and I have been writing, that I want to focus on, because it hasn't been since maybe early 2000s that I've had actual time to focus on a project. It's the cycle that we got caught up in pre-pandemic, record, tour. And in order to do that, although I was happy with the majority of what I've done over the past 15 years, there's some of it that I had to force. I had to be like, we need to have a record, so you have to write. And again, I was satisfied with what I came out with for the most part. but moving forward, I really want to try and afford myself the luxury of doing it the way that I used to, because I think I got something really cool in the pipes that deserves that attention.
Sorry, I just want to bring up, you guys were talking about Rammstein. We saw Rammstein this summer, and it was an amazing show. What would be even more amazing, I like the fire, but to create the fire, they had to have all these towers that were very view obscuring. And I would have watched them play in a park in the afternoon with no special effects whatsoever if I could have seen them better. For sure. So sometimes that production can bite you in the balls when you're a viewer. That being said, it's amazing that people need all this. Sometimes these big productions are just basically screaming, "Don't notice how bad they are. Don't notice how bad they are."
Yeah.
And really, Rammstein are fucking amazing. And so are you. My favorite performance is, like I said, that one at Heavy MTL, just because I felt like I could just really take in everything you were singing, and there was nothing distracting my
Well, that's
ADD.
actually good. That's interesting to know, man, because in my mind, I'm always thinking while I'm doing the acoustic stuff, I'm thinking, oh shit, people are going to be bummed that you're not there with a full band. But I think it's ultimately a human experience, the whole live show thing. And if it strays too far into the realm of performance, in lieu of like that human connection, where it's just, you're very separate and it's all this digital, it's almost like watching a live music video in a sense. You're there for a different reason. I think the emotional investment that people have in music, I know for myself that when I loved an album or a band when I was a kid, if I had a chance to go see them, it was less about how it sounded and looked, and more about the fact it's like, well, that's the person.
Yeah.
That's where this all stems from. That's where that experience came from. And that's why it was important to me. Right. And so I think it's good to not lose sight of that as well.
The tour is going to be, well, the next tour, the reason, one of the reasons we're talking to you is about this upcoming tour, like you mentioned, with Dream Theater. You're going to be in Montreal in the month of July. There's another band on the tour, Animals as Leaders. Tell me a bit about that band. Have you had a chance to get into them? Are you friends with them? Have you seen them live yet? Well, and because I think they're, I got to see them a few years back, and they just blew me away.
Yeah, they're astounding, man. I've known Tosin since he was in Reflux. He used to, years ago, Reflux opened for Strapping years ago.
Yeah.
And we got along well then. And then, we Devin Townsend project and Animals as Leaders, we did a ton of touring together. So I've known those guys forever, man. And when they were in Vancouver a couple of months back, I hate going to shows, but Javier and I got coffee, which is great. But I think that what's interesting about this upcoming tour, Dream Theater, Animals as Leaders, myself, is that the prog world, I guess if you want to call it that, is in this interesting state where it's hard to define what it is, because I think people hear the word prog and the first thought is like Genesis or Yes or
the building blocks, if you will.
The building blocks, yeah. But I think it's kind of shifted in a sense where progressive maybe means something more literal than that, where it is just things that are pushing that boundary, whichever boundary that they're in. I would say that there's a lot of bands that are maybe heavy metal bands that I would quantify as being progressive.
Well, even a band like Mastodon. I mean, we're good friends. Meshuggah or Opeth, or these bands do push the boundary. We just talked a couple weeks ago. We spoke to Josh from Cattle Decapitation. They're pushing the boundary, and they're pushing it in another direction. Yeah. So but I think this comes back to what we were saying, how when we grew up, we couldn't like Duran Duran and Enya, but now it's just like, it's like a nice big, it's like a big soup that everybody just puts a little bit in. And I also think with the internet, there's all these niches that exist that there's, 20, 30,000 people that are like participating in this thing. And I'll meet with somebody and they'll be like, hey, here's a scene that's been existing for a while that I had no idea even existed. Yeah.
And then they go into the backstory. It's like, oh, and there's this band, and then bass player fucked the singer's wife or whatever, and then they broke up, and then whatever it is, but there's this whole drama that went on. And there's this lineage of 8 records, and I'm thinking, I didn't even know that scene existed. let alone there's all these offshoots of it now. And so I think internet is a huge distinction as to why it's more homogenized now.
Yeah.
When we were kids, man, it's like everybody knew about Madonna or what she was doing. But now all these things exist, and unless you're in it, you have no idea, right?
Yeah, and it's exciting time to be. I've always said this, the internet has provided it to be an exciting time for a musician if you're a creative and if you've got control over your own career. If you someone who has a studio, someone who has work ethic, you can have a really nice career if you've got if you've got a good head on your shoulders, that's
exactly
awesome.
it, man. I think it requires a bit of post-pandemic. It requires a new strategy. And I think that strategy is going to be based on the individual, which makes it, for me, it's taken a bit more time to figure out what the next step for this is, because it seems like in order to do it efficiently, I need to really take stock of what's happened over the past few years and just and put that into excuse me a second, and put that into some sort of category that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can continue doing things the way that you had been doing it, but everything changed, right? And I think that unless you change with it and keep that sense of change as being a constant in your work, then man, you're going to fall by the wayside.
Yeah, it gets you tend to get a little past dated like milk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
You want to age like whiskey.
Which you have. Devin, thanks so much for taking the time to chat today. We really appreciate it. Both Ryan and I are fans, and not just of the music, but just of you and your work ethic and your attitude towards music. I think it's really refreshing, and I think it's nice to see someone who isn't afraid to change. And I've always liked that. I've always liked people that aren't afraid to go out on a limb and try things, because that's the beauty of life, is going out there and trying. You're only as
well. I really appreciate it. I am afraid to change, though, of course. Let's again, it's very easy to claim these things that happen through either tenacity or accident as being some sort of virtue.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, I just kind of close my eyes and plug my nose and jump into the things that freak me out. But it's not that there's an absence of fear.
Oh, no. I mean,
it's just we're doing it nonetheless, right?
Yeah, that's it. You got to face those fears.
For instance, I'm too afraid to do a music video of just me dancing in my backyard. But someday, I hope I gain the courage to.
Well, we're going to fix that.
One way to address that fear.
What's that?
Do it. You'd be shocked at how few people care. It's great. And that's the thing that I even talking to my kids about that, when they're afraid about what people are going to think. I'm like, man, no one gives a shit. Everybody's too concerned that they're going to look silly. Mm-hmm. And, maybe they'll use you and your trip as being something that they could ridicule to feel better about themselves. But maybe on some level, they're silently jealous.
Well, the reality is that people are so selfish and so self-absorbed that they're not noticing anything you're doing anyways.
No one cares, man.
The thing about Devin Townsend is, he's been around for years, but he's not exactly the type of guy that you'd see on Much Music 50 times a day, or get radio play and a bunch of other terminology that dates me significantly, because, but even in a music video sense, we discussed with Animals, it's just him dancing in his yard. And it's sometimes that's enough. When the music is good enough, that's enough. And I just wanted to say, again, happy birthday to my buddy Marco. But Marco is one of those guys that that is like Indiana Jones. When it comes to music, he's the guy that goes into the temple and will, grab the artifact and run away from a giant boulder in order to find that new great music that no one else is talking about. And I think it's important, because that's how people used to find out about Metallica. That's how people found out about the Misfits. It was all word of mouth, because the world wasn't telling you this is fucking awesome. Some person was telling you. Yeah. And I want to actually ask, Jay, back in the day, who was your, Marco Vaquero, who was the cool guy that you knew that opened a whole world of music that you didn't realize that you were, whether it's pop or metal or whatever?
I think for me, one of my big awakenings one of them was, so when my dad and my mom divorced, my dad started dating this woman who had a son. And all of a sudden it was like, I've got an older brother. And it was kind of cool because he was really into hip hop. He played football. He was into hip hop. He was a DJ. And he opened my eyes to hip hop early on, like really, really early on.
Oh, okay.
So like the first wave of hip hop, like, Grandmaster Flash and Run DMC and all that stuff was ushered in from him for me. So it was kind of like the timing that it was going on in the world. And he was kind of really into that scene. So he had a lot of vinyl and records and 12 inches and stuff. So yeah, that would be like my former stepbrother, if you will. Was one of the guys that ushered me into a huge hip hop scene. And it's probably one of the reasons why I love hip hop the way I do. It's funny because I remember people getting me into certain bands like Jane's Addiction. I got into Jane's Addiction because of this guy Avram, who I wrote my first songs with before Slaves on Dope. So he's the reason I got into Jane's Addiction, because he turned me on to them. It's more like certain bands. Like I remember this person bringing me this and going, you should listen to this, or suggesting this and be like, oh my God, this is crazy. But yeah, it's nice when you have those people that are on the pulse. And I know I'm that person for a lot of people, because a lot of my friends will be like, what should I listen to that's new? And I'll be like, listen to this.
Oh, that's cool, dude.
And send them like 10 different things to listen to. So
dude, that's awesome. Like, what you're just describing is what kind of people call influencers today, except there's no push and there's no ulterior motives. Like, there's no one's telling you, oh, by the way, promote this, we'll give you money. It's just like, dude, like Marco would probably, would raise an eyebrow and shrug his shoulders when someone says, hey, I'll give you $20 to say this album you don't like is good.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want an authentic voice with a similar taste set to tell you, hey, what should I be listening to? And I'm the same way. Steven from Fantasia, same thing. Steven, what am I seeing this year?
Yep. Yeah, he's the kid. Yeah. Like that Stephen Lee is the guy who would know. He's the Fantasia guy, and he's also the movie guy. Like he'll message me after he's seen something and be like, you need to see this. You need to see this. Yeah. And it's important to have those people whose opinions you can trust. One thing about you and I is that we're not usually mouthpieces for hire, in the sense that we'll talk about stuff that we're passionate about. And if we don't like something, you won't hear us talk about it. We won't bash it, but you just won't hear us bring it up. So yeah, anyways, that's a whole rabbit hole.
That's true. I don't really go out of my way anymore, because I just found that, we've talked about before, fandom's become a little toxic. It's it's kind of like that cool to hate train, and just like, I don't know, just we saw The Flash in a love fest apparently, and then the rest of the internet has different opinions on it,
which makes no fucking sense to me.
Yeah, I don't.
It is so stupid. Yeah. I don't get it, because the movie is phenomenal. The movie's so good. I'm a firm believer, and I know we're going off track here, but I'm a firm believer that The Flash will find its audience, unfortunately, later. And once the dust settles a bit, people are going to go back and go, man, that was a really good movie.
Yeah.
But it's so sad when you see something that's so good get lost in the shuffle. But really, studios need to take a step away from superheroes for a bit. They need to.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I think the world needs a bit of a break. And just because the people that aren't in the know are they're just like, stop, stop throwing it down my throat. Like, stop. And that's how they feel. Guys like us are like, yes, but I think the everyday person needs a break from it.
Bringing it back to Devin Townsend, I think that's a great career to have, because he was never shoved down anyone's throats.
No, you had to go find him.
Yeah, and Metallica becomes the biggest band in the world in 1991, 1991, and as a result, they have difficulty trying to take the next step, and they make load and reload. They cut their hair, they eat all this shit. But Devin Townsend just did whatever he wanted from day one. Was not if anything, would push back on anybody saying, oh, you should do this now. Yeah. It would make sense if he wrote the song Animals 20 times, but he didn't. You know?
All right, listen. First of all, let's let everybody know what's happening next week, because this is super cool. If you were a fan of the band Quicksand, and there's a lot of people out there, Quicksand, influential band, post-hardcore, just really, really cool band that put out an album called Slip. That was their major label debut. It was their debut, but it was their major label debut, and it's just an important record on a lot of fronts. And we are going to be doing something very special with Walter, the Schreifels, lead singer of Quicksand and guitar player, and of many other bands. He was, one of the founders of Youth of Today, one of the founders of Gorilla Biscuits. was in a band called Rival Schools, had a solo career, and Quicksand have reissued the 30th anniversary of Slip. And the folks at Iodine Records were nice enough to send me a copy of the deluxe hardbook edition and a copy to Walter, and we are going to unbox it together at the same time.
Wow.
And he's assured me that this thing hasn't even been opened yet. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be happening next week on the Rockman Power Hour. And we will be giving away one of the deluxe editions as well. So it's super cool. Just want to let everybody out there know that. So if you're a fan of Quicksand, this is going to be the most unique way to see the entire package in real time with myself and with Walter. So make sure you keep that locked on your old radar. We'd like to thank everybody involved with the podcast. First off, our title sponsor, Heartbeat Hot Sauce, the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. This is the In Flames artist edition, I guess. This is the collab that they did with the band In Flames, who are great. We got to get the guys from In Flames on the podcast. We'll work on that. And make sure you use our promo code Rockman20 right below there. And you too can have your entire fridge filled with Heartbeat Hot Sauce like Ryan. So thank you to them.
I'm being surrounded by good taste.
Use our promo code Rockman20 and you'll get 20% off your entire order. Big thanks to Studio House Designs for always being with us and helping us look fresh. So make sure you check them out over at studiohousedesigns.com. Thanks to AKG for the headphones and for the microphones. Thanks to all of you for joining us on this journey. Thanks to my co-host Ryan Stick. Thanks to our producer Julia Kajerski, who works tirelessly behind the scenes. And I want to remind you that if you can, please subscribe to the podcast, share whatever you can, and leave comments. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. And we appreciate all of you for joining us on this journey. And until next time, we'll see you on the Rockman Power Hour.